Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. Dr. Bart Ehrman. I've read several of your books. I think almost every book that you have, I've read. Maybe not your dissertation, as I saw you and Paula Gia talked about, but there's a common theme in some of them of you mentioning your past. And I love that because I can relate to you in terms of a journey of learning and growing in a world where you realize, hey, maybe what I believed or what I thought isn't true. And so you're doing a course, we'll call it a course, about why you're not a Christian. It's going to be free. Anyone and everyone can come and sign up. And I hope to see them there. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then we get into your story a little bit, just teasing us with what we might hear in that course.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm really interested in doing this course. I've never done a course like this, and a lot of the stuff I talk about in this course are things I've never talked about publicly before. The course will be explaining why I'm no longer a Christian. I started out as a Christian, and I talk about how I was raised, but briefly, and about how I converted to be a born again Christian in high school, and then eventually became a very strong conservative evangelical Christian, but then how especially my scholarship made me understand that the Bible is not the inerrant Word of God. Many people who've heard my story before think that I went from that to being an atheist. But I was a liberal Christian for many years. Was a pastor of a Baptist church for a year. And I talk about how I started moving away from the faith and what was driving that. Eventually, I did leave the faith altogether. It's been 30 years ago now, but it's not for reason of my biblical scholarship. And so I talk about that, about what made me want to be a Christian in the first place. I'm a born-again Christian. What made me leave that? What made me then leave Christianity altogether? Not related to my scholarship, but my trying to understand the world better. But I also spend a lot of time talking about things I haven't talked about very much publicly, which are issues involving the struggles one goes through when one leaves the faith, and the fears one has when one leaves the faith, and why it's traumatic, and what one can do about it. And if one does leave the faith, does that leave one without any moral compass? Does it mean there's no reason to be ethical anymore? Does it mean that you have no hope? Does it mean that there's no meaning in life, no purpose in existence if you think this is all there is? And so I deal with that over the course of 4 lectures, about 45 minutes long, each of them. And I talk about a lot of stuff in there that I've never talked about before. So if people have heard my story, it's not going to just be repeating stuff I've said completely. And those who haven't heard, this will be, for anybody, really. It's really for anybody who's thinking about leaving the faith, anyone wondering why somebody does leave the faith, anybody who has left the faith, anybody who's, just a Christian and interested in hearing some other view. So it's not meant to convert or deconvert anybody. It's just meant to tell my story in light of the kind of scholarship and the kind of thinking I've done about the world.
So you'll get into how Satan appeared to you at one point in your life and you sold your soul and all that, right?
Yeah, no, actually, I was unaware of that, and rats. I wish I'd known.
Right. No, I there's something about the personal narrative that you do put in your books where I relate to. For me, I have to admit, learning the scholarship has broadened my understanding in a way that the infantile, inerrant, fundamentalist approach that I had, that bubble for sure popped. And I can relate in a way where there was a transition between what is the meaning of this material and how there's other ways to understand these things than what I once did. So I still held on to something. And then eventually it was for me, it was more of a scientific and then, trying to observe what we can know and work from there. And so then I stopped assuming things that we don't have evidence for, or things just don't seem to point in that direction. Is there any relatability to the things I'm describing in your own kind of story, or?
Yeah, no, very much. I mean, I think that I think scholarship on the Bible and on early Christian history and the kinds of things that I teach at university can be very useful for showing just on an academic level why fundamentalist Christianity is highly problematic. Um, but people often think that if you don't have a fundamentalist view of the Bible, that it's inerrant in every way, then you can't be a Christian. Yeah. And that's bogus. I mean, I was a Christian for many years with understanding that the Bible was fallible. And I have lots and lots of friends who are New Testament scholars who are Christian, and they know what I know about the Bible, but they're not fundamentalists. And so leaving fundamentalist Christianity isn't the same thing as losing your faith. And so losing your faith usually involves broader issues that you were referring to, like how you know what you know about the world. And, some people think, well, you should just believe. Well, you should just believe what? I mean, and people have reasons for believing. They may not know they have reasons for believing, but they do. I mean, maybe they were just brought up this way, and it's what they've always thought, so it makes sense to them. Well, that's fine. But, you're brought up thinking all sorts of things that you don't agree with now, and because you thought about it. And you've had other experiences. And I don't think it should be any different for your faith, because the faith is very important to people. And so they should certainly use their heads to try and figure it out. It's not that you can kind of outthink God or something. It's not like that. It's what really makes sense to you, given what you know about the world. And it sounds like that's what you went through as you started discovering the sciences and started realizing that there are other ways to explain what happens in the world. And different people have different reactions to that, of course. Some people stay in the faith, some won't. But I hope at least people will become more thoughtful about it. And part of the goal of this course is to help people think through some of these issues.
I'm excited about what you teased us about, just saying meaning, purpose, value, because I relate to you in saying that you have more meaning now, more purpose now than you did when you were this child of God living in this world, soldier for Christ, trying to, a pilgrim, voyaging through, trying to save souls, the whole nine. I tend to see that I have a lot more purpose now, and even I enjoy life better than I once did. Will we get in behind the curtain and see the wizard on this course with you?
Such as he is. I hope he's not a fake wizard like in ours, but I mean, he's. I think a lot of Christians, not all, but a lot of Christians are not bothered by a number of issues in our world because they think God's going to make it all right in the end. That this is kind of like a dress rehearsal for what it's really going to be like afterward. And some people have a hard time now, God will make it up to them. And if you're suffering now, it'll be okay later. And so it's deferring. It's deferring when the real thing happens. If you think this is the real thing, and that it's not a dress rehearsal, it's not practice, this is it, then it actually changes your view of life and the meaning of life and how you ought to enjoy this life. This life is not about preparing for some later life. This is the life. And for me, I'll explain in some detail why that provides more meaning and purpose for me. And it shows why I can't neglect issues about, what's happening to our world and the pain and the suffering in the world, some of it caused by other humans, others not. And how, if we don't help people now, they die, that's it. So it's better, we really need to help people. And we ourselves, we live for a fulfilling life as much as we can in whatever our circumstances are.
It's interesting. There seems to be a lot of people I've met who have gone through deconversion who've become better people since leaving. Maybe Christianity works for some, but others, it seemed to have more of a negative impact. I tend to be one of those for me in terms of I'm more humanistic now. I care more about the now. I care about helping the people now rather than, don't worry, don't store your treasures up here on earth. We got this other place where we're focused on. And so I love what you said there. There are people who contact me at MythVision a lot who are suffering, they're struggling, they're like in fear of nihilism. They can't believe, they tell me they can't believe this is true, but they also like are in this existential crisis of not knowing where to go from here. And is there meaning? Is there purpose? What's the point? Freaking out, or even the whole idea of what if I'm wrong? But I do think that it isn't true, but what if I'm wrong? And I'm like, one person, I said, become a Christian again then. Just go to sleep at night. I literally told them, Be a Christian again if that gives you some hope. And they're like, but I can't. I literally don't believe it anymore. I can't think that it's true, but I worry at night if it's true and if I'm going to go to hell and stuff. So will we get into something of this kind of sort in your course?
Yeah, I'm going to talk a lot about that kind of thing, about how traumatic it can be to leave the faith if you've been very committed to it, and even if you just grew up with it, and how disturbing it can be. And some people are afraid of hell, and so I'll talk a little bit about the fear of hell. Some people are afraid of non-existence. The idea of not existing really freaks a lot of people out, and so I'll talk about that a bit. I think often what happens is people are afraid of things that come out to be not true. Once they leave the faith, they realize, yeah, that I was afraid of that, but it actually didn't happen to me. And and you're right. I mean, if they think, oh, I was better off as a believer, and they go back to being a believer. But the other thing I'll say is that the kinds of issues that I think about when I'm talking about doubting or wondering whether the faith is right, these are issues that are important for believers to think about too. So we shouldn't sell short the importance of reflecting on faith, even if you stay in the faith. I have a lot of people in my undergraduate classes at Chapel Hill where I teach. I have a lot of students who come out of the class who they remain Christians, but they say, this has made me a stronger Christian because now I understand the kinds of things I need to think about, and I think I need to find answers for. And if I find answers for them, then I'll be an informed Christian. And I tell them, I say, it's great. It's better. I mean, if you're not an informed believer, you're an ignorant believer who wants to be ignorant. The same thing applies to skeptics, though. A lot of skeptics just kind of assume that, God talks crazy. And so they need to be challenged in the other way, because we all need to be more thoughtful and reflective about what we think about the world and our place in it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ehrman. I look forward to it on the 23rd. I hope everybody signs up. It is free. So I will be seeing you guys there. Thank you.
Thank you.